This video is going to cover practice questions for volume from your booklet. Number 1. Find the volume of the cube with edges that are 5 and 1/5 of an inch in length. Write the answer in exact fraction form and decimal form. As I've taught you, all questions should really be accompanied by a diagram. So I'm going to attempt to draw a cube. A cube is a figure in 3D where all sides are equal in length. I did say I was going to attempt. I'm going to label the sides properly. I'm going to put 5 and 1/5 on, say, the length, the width, and the height. To do any question, you need a formula. The formula for the volume of a cube is the side times the side times the side, or you could write it as the side cubed. If we're going to do it as a fraction, then you need to change each fraction, a mixed number, to an improper fraction. So 5 and 1/5 as a mixed number, if that is a mixed number, as an improper would be 26 over 5. So if I do it like this, 5 and 1/5 times 5 and 1/5 times 5 and 1/5, I have to do it all again. Changing it all to mixed numbers. Sorry, into impropers. 26 over 5 times 26 over 5 times 26 over 5. So multiply all your numerators, you're going to get the product, 17,576. The bottom, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Now that doesn't have a lot of meaning because it is a improper fraction. So we change it either with your calculator or long division. 125 goes into 17,576 140 times, and there would be a remainder of 76. That'll be the answer, 140 and 70 over 126. The unit would be inches cubed, or cubic inches because it's a volume. That's the method, it's exact fraction form. If you had done it as a decimal, 5.2 times 5.2 times 5.2, you would have got 140.608 cubic inches. You could have at that point, to make life a lot easier, changed it back into a fraction by doing 608 over 1,000, which would reduce to the answer here. So the bottom line, the formula for the volume of a cube is the equal sides multiplied together, side by side by side. The units for all volume questions will be cubic something, either cubic inches, cubic feet, cubic meters, cubic something. That's number 1. Now number 2 has 3 separate parts. So you can be sure that you're going to have a diagram to go with this and accompany some work. It says we have a child-sized pool in the shape of a circular cylinder. So a child-sized pool, you'll notice that the dimensions are given, 5.2 decimeters deep, which is just stupid, but it's to make you think. 5.2 decimeters deep, and you're given the diameter, 2.36 meters. The diameter. Now, the first thing that I would do is read the question and figure out what unit is required. So for part A, you are required to find the volume. Okay, that's pretty simple. But the question says in cubic centimeters. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert all my desired measurements into centimeters. 5.2 decimeters. I want to change it into centimeters. Decimeter to centimeter, you multiply it by 10. So it's going to be 52 centimeters. The diameter right now is 2.36, so 236 centimeters. And you're going to be required to have the radius, which is half of the diameter. So 236 divided by 2 is 118. So to do part A, we start with the formula. The volume of a cylinder is essentially the area of a square, pi times the radius squared. That's the bottom of the figure, which is a circle, times by the fact that you have walls to make it 3D, so times the height. So pi r squared and then h. That's your formula. And once you have the pi r squared and the h written down, that's a trigger that you need both a radius and a height. So I start with filling in my numbers. Pi, which is of course 3.14 yada yada yada. You can't just use 3.14. It's not a terminating decimal. There's many. It's actually called a non-terminating decimal, an irrational number. It never stops. Okay. The radius is 118. You got to square that and then multiply by the height of 52. So on your calculator, you can do it several ways. I like to square my radius first, then times by the height, then times by pi. However, it doesn't matter. A lot of the newer calculators, you can do it all in one step. The math answer is going to be 2274.663.877. That is cubic centimeters, because you had a centimeter for the radius squared times the height, also in centimeters. You had 3 basic centimeters multiplied together, cubic centimeters. Now the question here required the nearest hundredths, so your final answer would be 2274.663.88 in final proper rounding. Now the question for B is asking you to do the same question for the same pool, but now it wants it in cubic meters. One of the problems that students seem to have is they think that they can change from centimeters to meters when the unit is cubed. And you can, but there's a trick. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you the answer as if we hadn't done part A and we just do part B from scratch, using the answer, all the dimensions given in meters. 5.2 decimeters for the height is the equivalent to 0.52 meters for the height. So if I take the dimension for the height and the radius, which I must change the diameter to the radius in meters, it will be 1.18 meters. Now the formula is the same. Pi times the radius squared times the height. So pi multiplied by 1.18 squared times the height, 0.52. Now you need to do the work. So 1.18, square it, times by pi, times by 0.52. Look at your calculator, it's going to say 2.274663. Remember, you must use the programmed pi button. You cannot just use 3.14, it's not accurate enough. So here's my question to make you think here. If you had attempted to try to change the volume in cubic centimeters into meters, would you have gotten the right answer? Would you have known that when you change from cubic centimeters to cubic meters, you're not just dividing by 100, but you're dividing by 100 cubed, which means you're actually dividing by 1,000,000, because 100 times 100 times 100 is 1,000,000. And I think from my experience that you, as a student, have much less chance of getting that right than you do if you do the question again from scratch. So 100 cubed is 100 divided by 100 divided by 100. And you would get the same answer. You're required to round to the nearest two places. So I'd be looking for 2.27 cubic meters for the volume. And I'm not sure that you would have gotten that right. If maybe you will now that you've seen it. From cubic meters, you need to divide by the conversion factor to the third power. In this case, 100 to the third, which is actually 1,000,000. And the last question here is asking you for the liters. I'm going to give you a new conversion factor, which you must memorize. And that is, there's 1,000 cubic centimeters in 1 liter. So to convert into liters in part C, you would look at your answer for cubic centimeters for part A, and you would divide it by 1,000. So your original question, the decimal point, was there. You'll divide it by 1,000. It's going to take you to here. So the answer will be 2274.663. But the question was requiring you to the nearest whole liter. So that means no decimal point. That's going to round up, so it will become 2275 liters. So you have to understand and to get quickly into your head that there's 1,000 cubic centimeters in 1 liter. Example 3 says a fish tank measures 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 22 inches tall. Right away you know that's going to be a bit of a problem because you have mixed units, so you can anticipate there'll be a strategy to make that question work. How many U.S. gallons? So right away you're thinking, what is that about? How many U.S. gallons of water will it hold? And it gives you a conversion factor that says 231 cubic inches is the equivalent of 1 gallon. So that should be a clue that your final answer should be in cubic inches, so that you can convert it into a gallon or multiple gallons. So you draw a picture. You have a fish tank that's 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 22 inches tall. Your job is going to be to find the capacity of the tank in gallons. So 5 feet, 5 times 12 is 60 inches. 2 feet is 24 inches wide, and 24 inches wide, and 22 inches tall. To find the volume of this tank, you need to multiply the length times the width times the height. Basically, it's considered to be a rectangular prism. So 60 inches times 24 inches times 20 inches. The grand total works out to be 31,680 cubic inches if I did better math. That's a basic calculation of inches times inches times inches. So an inch by an inch, that means there's 31,000 little cubic inches of space inside that fish tank. Now, that's not what the question was asking you, though. didn't want the volume in cubic inches, I want the volume in gallons. So you can make a conversion factor with a proportion. 231 cubic inches is the equivalent of 1 U.S. gallon. So therefore, how many U.S. gallons, X on the bottom, would be the equivalent of 31,680 cubic inches? So to solve this, you're going to cross multiply 31,680 times by 1, which of course is the same number, and then divide it by 231. You're going to get a calculator answer of 137.1428, and that is of course in gallons. And the question specifically said round the nearest tenth, so it's going to be 137.1 gallons. And that's how you do a volume question from linear measurement into a capacity measured in liquid format for a gallon. Questions 4 and 5 in the next video.